Hello everybody. So we are going to go ahead and start on day 2 notes. This video is going to be a little bit longer, I think, than a normal video. I'm trying my best to make sure it's not too long, but we'll see. So let's go ahead and just get started. How about that? So today we're doing forms of linear equations. There are 3 forms that you need to know. Slope-intercept, which is kind of already introduced to you. Point slope, which we don't use very often. It's used more in higher level math, but I'll just show it to you. And then the standard form, which is one that you do need to know. So standard form for linear is something you need to know as well. So slope-intercept is the y equals mx plus b, where m is our slope and b is our y-intercept. This is the one that you must know for algebra. Like at the minimum, you should know slope-intercept form, because even if the other forms are kind of like not sticking to your brain, if you know slope-intercept form, you can do most of these questions just by like changing answers into slope-intercept form so you can find stuff. Okay? Point slope form looks like this: y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1, where m again is our slope, but the x1 and the y1 are coordinates from an ordered pair. So they actually make up an ordered pair. This regular x and the regular y, those are the x and y's that you have to, like an x and a y, the actual letters should be in every one of these equations, okay? So, because that's where you're going to plug in stuff if you need to, all right? And then standard form is just like ax plus by equals c, where a and b and c are all just numbers. They're not really representing anything like slope-intercept and point slope form. And standard form actually has a couple rules to go with it as well. So one rule is that a, the number in the front, can't be a negative number and it can't be 0. So you're rarely going to interact with something that's where a came out to be 0. What's more likely to happen is that you're going to get, when you work it out, that number with the x is going to be a negative, and in order to have it in standard form, you'd have to get rid of that negative. So to do that, you would just either divide all the terms by -1 or multiply all the terms by -1 just to get rid of that negative sign in the front. Okay? Second rule is that there is no fraction, so a, b, and c aren't fractions. If one comes out to be a fraction, to get rid of it, just multiply all the terms by the denominator of the fraction. That way they turn into integers and it still has the same meaning as the equation. It's just with bigger numbers, that's all. The last thing is that a, b, and c cannot have common factors. So, for example, 4, 6, and 8 all have a common factor of 2. They can all be divided by 2. If a, b, and c were 4, 6, and 8, that's not allowed for standard form, so you'd have to go and divide all of them by what they're divisible by. So you get smaller numbers, okay? And that's only if all 3 have a common factor. We'll practice standard form a whole lot more. It's kind of hard to like talk about it, and I didn't want to give you too much practice in the video, so we'll do more practice in class for sure. Now, one of the standards says that you have to go from one form to another. If they ask you to put it in a different form, you have to be able to. This is the way you would do it. So if they wanted it to go from point slope to standard form, you'd have to change it to slope-intercept first and then change it to standard form, or vice versa. But if you got slope-intercept, you can change it to either one, because that's really easy, just to put it so it looks the same. But here's like the general thing. If you're going to change something to point slope, you're going to use the slope, so find the slope however you need to, whether it's from a graph or just picking points or something, and then you're going to find a point. To find a point is really easy, especially if you're going from slope-intercept. Pick an x value, plug it into the equation, find the y value that goes with it, like we did with the stained glass window. Okay? To change something in the slope-intercept form, just get y by itself. We've already done it in class, so it's not a new thing. And to change something in standard form, you're basically getting x and y on the same side and making sure you follow those 3 rules. Okay? So again, we'll do more practice with it. So there's 4 other things that you guys are going to have to do. You're going to have to be able to write an equation given a slope and a point, given 2 points, given a graph, and then the 4th one was given a different equation. So first one we're going to practice is given a slope and a point. Write the linear equation for a line that goes through the point -3, 2 and has a slope of -1/3. Now, they didn't specifically ask for which equation. So if that was on a test, you could write it in any of these three equations. It's whichever one's easiest for you. However, since we're practicing stuff, we're actually going to write all three out, okay? Now, since we were given a point and a slope, the easiest one to do would probably be point slope, because it's in the title, okay? So we're going to start with that. We're going to write slope or point slope form because we have the slope, which is negative 1/3, and we have the point, negative 3, 2, where negative 3 is our x1, 2 is our y1. So we're going to plug it into this form. We're literally just plugging in the numbers, okay? So it becomes y minus the 2 from the y1 equals negative 1/3 times x minus negative 3. Keep an eye out for these double negatives, okay? Those minus signs are part of the form, not the value. Okay, once we get that, we're just going to go ahead and simplify. Really, the only thing we're simplifying are these double negatives and kind of losing these parentheses in the front. Because we still want it to be in this form. We don't want to distribute. Okay, so my point slope form is just y minus 2 equals negative 1/3 times x plus 3. Now that we have point slope form, if we wanted to do slope intercept, we could just isolate the y and distribute all this and do it that way. That's totally fine. So if it specifically asks you to do slope intercept, you can always do point slope first and then change it to slope intercept. Or you can do it this way, where you actually go through and do the work. So slope intercept, I need a slope and a y-intercept. I got the slope, but they didn't give me the y-intercept. They just gave me a random point on the line. So what I would do is I'm going to fill in what I can. Y equals the m, negative 1/3, x plus b. I don't know what b is. I need to figure that out. They did give me, however, an x and a y. Okay? They gave me that x and a y from the point. I could plug in an x and a y here and solve for the b, because that would be the only variable left. So let's do that. Plug in the x and y from the point. That way I've only got b now, and I can solve for it. Okay. Solve for b. So I'm going to go ahead and multiply this. Negative 1/3 times 3 is 1. What plus 1 gives you 2? B is equal to 1. So now I have my slope and my y-intercept. My equation is y equals negative 1/3 x plus 1. Remember, I should always have an x and a y in my linear equation, like the letters x and y in my equation. Standard form, just change your slope-intercept form, okay? Or change, like, again, if you had point slope, and that's what you did first, change it to slope-intercept, and then change it to standard. Standard doesn't really have like a quick, like, plug and chug kind of way, so it's just easier to put it in one of these two forms and then change it to that. So this was the slope-intercept form. I'm going to move my x to the other side. So I'm going to add 1/3 x to both sides, and they will cancel out on this side, but I can't combine them, which is fine because that's what I want. I want an x term and a y term, and it equals some number. Now the problem is it's got a fraction here. I don't want any fractions. That's not allowed for standard form. So to undo that, I take the denominator and I'm going to multiply every single term by that denominator in the equation, all three parts. So 1/3 times 3 gives me 1x, 3 times y gives me 3y, and 1 times 3 gives me 3. So that's my standard form. And you could lose the 1 in the front, so you can just say x plus 3y equals 3. That's fine. You guys are going to try these on your own, so try all three. I don't care which one you start with. So if you want to go ahead and start with point slope and then change the slope intercept and then do standard form, you can do it that way, or you can do it the way I showed you in the notes. It's up to you. Okay? So next page, it's way up here. Next one is given 2 points. So very similar to given a point and a slope, the only difference is they didn't give us a slope. Now, it did give us 2 points, which means we can find the slope. So that's really the only, we're doing a little extra work, but not much. So this one I'm going to start with slope intercept. So first thing I'm going to do is find the slope. I'm going to plug it into the y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1 thing. And I get negative 10 over 5, and I need to reduce that. That gives me negative 2. Okay, so I have the slope, but I don't have the y-intercept. Neither of these are a y-intercept. So this is all I got right now. Y equals negative 2x plus b. Again, I need to find the b. So I'm going to use one of these 2 points, it doesn't matter which one, to plug in for the x and y, and that way I can solve for the b. So I'm going to use the first one just because it's first. So 3 equals -2 times -1 plus b. Multiply it, so it becomes 3 equals 2 plus b. Well, what plus 2 gives me 3? That's b equals 1. You could solve it like a one-step equation too if you can't think about it. So knowing that, I can go back and plug in what b is. Y equals -2x plus 1. For point slope, I need to find the slope, which luckily I've already done. Get equals -2. Now that I have that, I just need to pick a point to actually plug in for x1 and y1. It doesn't matter which one you pick. So again, I'll pick the first one, -1 and 3. I have my x1, I have my y1, I have my m. Plug that into your equation, simplify any double negatives going on. So y minus 3 equals -2x plus 2. Done. Now if you wanted to use the other point, that's totally fine. It would just come out to be y plus 7 because it was a -7, so that was where your double negatives were, equals -2 times x minus 4. Both of these, even though they look different, they're still representing the same line. Okay? So, and then like if we knew a bunch more points, we could have all different equations, but they're still the same line. All right? That's why point slope is not my favorite, because there's so many different answers you can have for it, and that's hard to grade. Standard form, again, just take your slope intercept form and change it up. So we have y equals 2x plus 1, -2x plus 1. So I'm going to add 2x to both sides. So I get 2x, where'd it go? Way down here. 2x plus 1y equals 1. There's no fractions. There's not a 0 in the front. There's no common factor. Like I can't divide all these numbers by the same thing and it works out nicely. So I can leave it like that. And that's my final answer. You guys are going to try these 3 on your own. So try all forms. And it's okay if you realize like you hate point slope form. That's totally fine. I'm not a huge fan of it either. But it's good that you practice all 3 and kind of really decide which one is your favorite, because if you just want to go with favorites, that's fine. All 3 of them do have a benefit depending on the situation. Like when you're given a point slope has a reason for it then. It's the quickest one. It might not be your easiest one, but it is the quickest one. So I want you to practice them all so you have that skill set. But if you choose, like if you just want to do slope intercept because you like that and you're comfortable with it, that's totally fine. Now, if they tell you specifically to write it in a certain form, you got to follow what they tell you. But if I don't tell you what to write it as, you get free reign. Okay? So just be aware of that. All right, now given a graph, this one I think is probably the easiest for you guys. So if you're given a graph, for slope-intercept form, what you want to look for is the y-intercept and the slope, because that's what you need for y equals mx plus b. Here, the y-intercept, I wish I had a marker. Let's make this smaller so I can mark it up. The y-intercept is right here, okay? So that means my y-intercept is 6. My b is equal to 6. My slope, now I'm going to go from here, which I know it's not really crossing that point, but we're going to pretend it is, here to up here. So that means I'm going up 6 and over 3. So my slope is positive 6 over 3, which reduces to 2. Probably the easiest one we could do, okay? And you are more than welcome to choose other points. This one's kind of iffy, I know. But now that we have the slope and a y-intercept, we just plug it into that form. Y equals 2x plus 6. Easy peasy. Okay? Point slope, find the slope, and then use any point. You don't really want to use the intercepts because when you plug in an intercept, you have a 0 in there, and you really want to like simplify it because x plus 0 or y plus 0 is just that letter. So we try not to use the intercepts because of the 0 there. Okay, so for this one, I'm going to choose a different color. The slope is the same. We already found it. It's 2. I'm going to choose this point right here. I know, again, it's not really on there, but we're going to pretend it is. So my slope was already 2. We found that already. And I'm going to use the point -2, 2. So I'm going to plug it into that form. So y minus the 2, y1, equals 2, my slope, times x plus 2. And the reason it's a plus is because I would be doing x minus negative 2, and that I just gave you the simplified thing. Now for standard form from a graph, it's not really like, because we don't have something we can just plug in, standard form graphically is not a great thing. Okay, so like graphing standard form is not that bad, but trying to write an equation in standard form. So what I say is just change your slope, like do slope intercept, because that's really quick and easy, and change it to standard form. So we had y equals 2x plus 6. I'm going to subtract 2x from both sides, giving me negative 2x minus y. Or sorry, negative 2x plus y equals 6. Again, I cannot have this negative in front. That's not standard form. So to undo that, I'm going to multiply every term by negative 1. Okay? You could also divide every term by negative 1. That would work out too. But by multiplying, I just find it easier. So it becomes 2x minus y equals negative 6. And even though these are three very different equations, they are all representing this one line. Okay? So the next part for try on your own is I've given you a line. I've already mapped out the points I want you to use because this one also is kind of funky. So please use those 2 points. I don't care which one you use to like find your point slope form or to find your y-intercept or anything like that. But please use those 2 points rather than any other ones because I don't know about the other ones. Okay? And then the last page, I'm trying to make this quick, it's just like information on graphing linear equations. You guys are already you guys have had practice with graphing before, so it's not a foreign concept, but I didn't want to like do a bunch of examples and then a bunch of try on your own. So I just kind of did notes. For slope-intercept form, if you're going to have to graph that, the first thing you want to do is plot your y-intercept. That's going to be your first point. From that point, you can use your slope to either go up, down, left, right, like your rise over run kind of stuff, to plot your second point. Okay? Once you have 2 points, draw your line through the 2 points and just put arrows on the ends, and then you graphed it. That's it. Okay? For point slope form, we need to plot the given point that's in the equation. Now, the problem, like my issue with point slope, and this is where I have the biggest issue, is that, remember the signs. If it's a plus sign, it means that's a negative x or y1. It's part of the coordinate. But if it's a negative, if it's a minus sign, that means it was a positive in the coordinate. So you got to be careful. Okay? But that point that's given to you should be your first point that you plot. Then again, you use the slope to plot your second one, draw your lines through things. Now standard form, this is where like standard form actually comes. Like it's great for graphing. Did you know you can find the x and y intercept with standard form? You already did it in Unit 3. Okay, this is one of the questions we did in Unit 3. So I gave you this equation and asked you to find the x and y intercepts. Well, you guys have already done this. So an x-intercept is always some number times, or some number and 0, where the y-intercept is 0 and a number. So to find your x-intercept for standard form, which is what this is, you would plug in 0 for y and then solve for the x and write it as an ordered pair. To find the y-intercept, plug in 0 for x and solve for the y. Remember that? Remember? It was on your test. So step 1, find the x-intercept and plot it on your graph. Step 2, find the y-intercept and plot it on your graph. You have 2 points in, you can draw your line. And if you're really worried about graphing standard form, you can always change the equation to slope-intercept and graph it that way. Okay, so I've given you guys 3 try on your own because, again, watching me graph a line is not as beneficial to you. So I've given you 3 graphs and 3 different equations: slope-intercept, point slope, and standard form. I want you guys to try your best graph of it. Okay, so give it a try graphing it. Okay, I'll show you stuff in the calculator as well at some point, so it'll kind of help a little bit. But yeah, give that a try. And I made it under time. Yes. If you have questions, write them down. Otherwise, I will see you guys next class. Okay? Bye.